What can you learn about wine simply by browsing the wine aisles in stores? Why are mixed cases not always the best approach? Which wine rituals add to your enjoyment and which should you throw out? And why is humor essential to wine writing and enjoyment? Well, tonight you're going to get those stories and more with our guests, whom I'll introduce momentarily. If you're watching this video on the replay, please type the word replay into the comments. Where are you logging in from? What's the weather like? What's in your glass? And of course, if you're here with us on the live stream, I want to hear from you. I'm Natalie McLean, and you've just joined one of the most passionate groups of wine lovers who gather every Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. to talk to the most interesting people in the world of wine. This is the first time I'm live streaming this video on YouTube and Facebook, but it's based on a recording that we made for my podcast, Unreserved Wine Talk. But I will be here with you live in the comments, so get in there. Let me know what questions or comments do you have. What stories are you enjoying? All right, now back to our guests. Charles Jennings and Paul Keers are award-winning writers based in London, England. Charles is best known for his Wise Guy travelogue, Up North, and the Edwardian social history, Them and Us, as well as for his writing on architecture, property, and the urban environment in the Guardian and Telegraph newspapers. Paul Keers has also written for various British newspapers and magazines and was the launch editor for GQ magazine in the UK. He is currently the chair of the T.S. Eliot Society, UK. Charles and Paul co-authored the wine blog Sediment, described by New Statesman writer and Guardian literary critic Nick Lazard as the finest wine blog available to humanity. The blog became the basis for their book, I Bought It, So I'll Drink It. The Booker Prize-winning novelist Julian Barnes called it the funniest wine book I've ever read in a long time, or I've read in a long time. Not just laugh out loud funny, but snortingly choke on your cornflakes funny. Up there with Kingsley Amis and Jay McInerney, I can attest to that. I snorted quite a bit reading it. Their book won the prestigious Andre Simon Award, and they join us now from their homes in England. Welcome, Charles and Paul. So great to have you here with us.
Thank you.
All right, cheers. So, before we dive into your book, let's hear a bit about you. How did you meet? When, where? Was there a meet cute, or how did it happen?
Paul, do you want to go first? And I can contradict you.
You can contradict me. I think it was when I was working as a commissioning editor on the Sunday supplement of the Sunday Telegraph magazine. And I needed a writer. I can't remember what the assignment was. And someone recommended Charles. And whatever it was, he did it wonderfully, as he did over the following years. I kept using him, and we became firm friends and professional colleagues after that.
Sounds great. And can you remember the first wine that you shared together?
I was thinking it's got to be that, because I'd done a piece or a couple of pieces for you, and we went out to this Ponzi restaurant in Knightsbridge. Remember that one? And we must have had a bottle of wine or something there. Wouldn't that be it?
I think that was
the restaurant's long gone, but...
So a Ponzi wine, but not memorable?
Well, it was memorable because it wasn't very good, and we got to the end of the first bottle and said, God, this is terrible, isn't it? Should we get another bottle? And,
I love that.
We sort of realised we both had the same attitude to bad wine.
At some point, Paul lost it completely and started explaining about a man whose hobby was to carve mushrooms out of wood.
Wow.
Remember that?
I can see how that would flow.
Yeah, and I thought, well, okay, we'll just see where this goes.
There might be something to that wine then. Yeah. Well, okay. Now, you've written so much together about wine. Is there anything about wine that you disagree on?
Just about everything, I think. That's probably why Sediment
I think fundamentally
works.
I think basically we're in complete agreement about almost everything, aren't we?
I can see how this is going to go. That's great. Might be having to use the mute button at certain points, but
possibly.
So, Paul, tell us about your encounter, speaking of wine writers, with the legendary wine critic Oz Clarke.
Well, this was one of the things. Once we started writing Sediment, we got invited to tastings, and we were complete interlopers. We hadn't got any experience. We didn't know what was going on, but we'd obviously written at that point quite a few pieces making fun of the whole wine industry. And we went to this tasting. It was actually at the Oval Cricket Ground in London. And after a little while, I sort of nudged Charles. Look, there's Oz Clarke. Let's go and say hello. And of course, Charles said, no. Yes, go on. So we go up and say, hi, we're CJ and PK of Sediment Blog. And he just looked at us and said, you bad boys. And walked away, and that was it. And we thought, right, that's where we stand in the echelon of wine writing.
Well, at least he knew who you were.
Yes.
That's better than anonymity.
I have a feeling, I might be muddling it up with another occasion, that we were... They were really nice wines, so we were just drinking them as fast as they could, and as they're spitting. And we were all sort of leaving, and we were all coming down a flight of stairs, and we all sort of fell down the stairs in God's Clark about the same time. And that's when you were having this conversation. I can't remember. Does that ring a bell?
It does. I think one of the differences throughout the course of Sediment between us and the other wine writers was that we actually drink wine. I think a lot of wine writers just kind of taste it and spit it away, and we drink it. And I think that can on occasion make a sort of social difference between ourselves and some of the professionals.
Absolute dedication to your craft. Yeah. Spitting's for amateurs.
Almost monastic in our single-mindedness. Yeah.
So, Charles, maybe you could tell us when you thought you'd become a writer. Like, was there a moment? Was it your childhood?
Not really, no. I mean, I can remember it's the only thing I ever really wanted to do. When I was sort of, 10 or something, I thought, I'll write a book. As I got older, I thought, well, if I could do this, it'd be a great way of getting out of work.
So you enjoyed it.
That was really, I could just be left to do, follow my own kind of instincts and maybe make some money out of it. But that was it. I just from the word go. That's all I really ever wanted to do, I think.
And you, Paul, maybe how did you get started? Maybe your best and worst moments.
Well, I always say it sounds like I won my career in a tombola, because I won a Cosmopolitan magazine Young Journalist competition. And I had my first piece published in Cosmopolitan while I was still at university.
Wow.
And when I left, I got a job there and started working there, and it sort of took off from there. I mean, I'd done student journalism. I really wanted to work in magazine journalism. And this was like the most wonderful opportunity. I spent the first couple of years of my career working there as kind of token man on Cosmopolitan. It was great.
Yeah, speaking of Cosmopolitan, now, what did you write about for them?
Well,
for that contest,
I took the male point of view on things, and they used to have a column every month written by a man, and I wrote one of those, and then I wrote another one, and then when I was there, I kept coming up with these sort of male viewpoints on things. I was the right kind of age, early 20s and so on. And I just kept taking a male viewpoint on things, and they thought this was a valuable thing to have in a women's magazine.
Just a little bit, yeah, up to a point. So what were your best and worst moments, do you think, Paul, of your writing career? Do any stand out?
Possibly the worst moment was when, after Cosmopolitan, I wrote freelance for a while, and then I got an opportunity to work at the Daily Mail on the features desk. And they used to have this sort of ritual in the morning. They'd cut stories out of the upmarket papers and give them to the feature writers to see if they could make something of it. And I'd gone there thinking, because, I'd write about young men and yuppies, as it was at the time. And they brought around this story and put it in front of me. And it was about parking tickets for diplomatic immune members of foreign embassies in London, how they weren't paying their parking tickets. And I said, see what you can do with that. And I thought, well, I've got two choices here. I can either go and say, look, this really isn't the sort of thing I do, or I can have a go. And I thought, I'll have a go. And 4:00 in the afternoon, I'd written something, and they said, "Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, okay, we'll use that. See you tomorrow." And I thought, "Yes, I've made it." The worst moment was looking at that and thinking, "I can't do this." And fortunately, it seemed that I could.
How about the best moment? Any standout?
It sounds a bit corny, but actually, when Julian Barnes, you quoted him earlier on there, he actually sort of gave us our award when we won it for Sediment. And I thought, this is astonishing. Here is this really major writer saying how much he enjoys our writing. It was a terrific moment. You know, the fact it was him rather than just some kind of industry award, that meant an enormous amount.
Fabulous. Charles, have a best and worst moment in your writing career?
Well, I was sort of thinking about it, and in a way, it's the same moment. It was the best and worst moment, and it was like 30 years ago or something, and I'd written a book about the north of England. It was sort of Bill Bryson-y kind of funny sort of travelogue kind of thing, and it was doing quite well. And I went up to Manchester in the north of England to TV studio to take part in a show and flog the book. And it was this big studio, dazzlingly lit studio, and there were scores of people in this great big audience facing me, and they just put me on a sort of bar stool right in the middle of the floor, and all these eyes bearing down at me. And I felt I thought, oh, what am I going to do now? And there was a kind of guy, fronting it, but I thought, I'm just completely on my own. And also, I'd been very rude about Blackpool, the holiday town, a clapped out old holiday town in the north of England. And they got all these landladies from Blackpool, and they bust them in. And they were having a go at me. And I thought, this is not good. But at the same time, I thought, but then I'm on TV, and they've all, thousands of people are going to watch this, and they've all come here, and they can't beat me up on television because the cameras are on. So that was it. It was sort of all in one. It was a very odd sort of experience, but something like that. That's pretty good. That's pretty
Sure.
good.
That sounds intense. Did you go out the back way after that?
I can't quite remember how I got out. I was just ushered off this,
Right.
About 100 yards of empty floor, and then put into a cab.
Sounds good.
I wasn't pursued down the street by hordes of angry Blackpool landladies. So yeah, I got away.
That's good. Let's your Sediment blog that came before the book, obviously. What was the most controversial post that you had on the blog, or the one that caused the most reaction?
I was trying to remember. I can't. There must have been. Come on, Paul. You can do
The only
this.
one I can particularly remember is I was very critical of a wine, making enormous sort of fun of it, and suddenly started getting all these posts, replies saying, "Who do you think you are? You don't know anything about wine. Give it up now. What are you doing?" And it gradually realised that the PR agency for this particular wine chain had put up all these fake responses from these people, but what was great was that a lot of our regular readers started posting things saying, "Just keep out of this. We love this. Forget it." So that was the biggest battle, but it was a sort of an artificial one in a way.
Right.
Once we realised there is a term for it, I can't remember what it is now, for putting up all these sort of
Sock
official
puppet,
responses,
or
but
something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, lot of that shenanigans going on. So what happened to your Sediment blog archive? I found it. It's still online. But so everybody can access all of the articles that you wrote.
They're all up there. I once wrote a piece about the Sediment archive per se, because Jancis Robinson sold her archive to the San Francisco University.
Right.
And when they bought it, there was this whole thing about, it's this very important archive. Jancis Robinson has invented whole new ways of wine writing. And I thought, well, we've done that. We've invented ways of writing about wine when you don't know anything about wine. That's completely invention. And but our archive, in that sense, consists of sort of a lot of supermarket receipts and notes that have dribbled off into incomprehension, and I didn't think any university would really want to buy that. But the archive of the blog itself is very much online, and it's still there at sedimentblog.com, and I hope people are still reading it and enjoying it.
And it's lots of fun. I mean, you wrapped it up in 2020, so it's not that long ago. And you wrote the blog for about 10 years, was it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Lots of interesting forays and essays, and it's good reading. It's lots of, still relevant, I think. But I'm sure there's a university out there somewhere that just has to realize the value.
They better move fast.
So I love the title of your book. I bought it. I've bought it, so I'll drink it. How'd you come up with that?
I think that my wife Susie came up with it.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, Paul looks sceptical.
No, I think you're right.
I think she just came up with it, and because we came up with sediment, or probably Paul came up with sediment, and I think Susie jumped in and said, "Yeah, I bought it, so I'll drink it," because that's the sort of people we are.
Straightforward.
I
Yes.
think my original thinking for the subtitle for it was "How low can we sink?" It seemed to fit sediment,
It's real sort of Bukowski feel. Yeah, all
I
right.
think the buying thing is
We may be in the
quite
gutter, but we're
important,
looking at the
though.
shops. What?
Yes.
Sorry?
I mean, the fact that I said earlier, we do actually drink the wine. The other thing was that we actually buy it. I think we had an optimistic notion that if we had a wine blog, we would get boxes of wine appearing out of nowhere for nothing, which never really happened. So
That was
we were
a
always
major
disappointment. Yeah.
That was a major part. That was really the whole. And wasn't there a time, because we got about 2 bottles or something in 6 months, and it was not going well.
Oh wow.
No.
And there was another guy who had a more successful wine blog, and he had more than he could drink, so he gave us some of his stuff.
Right.
That happened, didn't it?
Yeah, that
so we
did
said, all right,
happen,
we'll take your leftovers. That's as good as it got, really. After that,
But I
think
always
Paul,
like to think that,
Paul pinched a few from wine tastings.
yes, yeah, which was a bit naughty.
You had a
but,
special.
you know,
You had a special coat you
bag.
used to take to
Yeah,
wine
that's right.
tastings. It was a bag.
Inside pockets?
Yeah. It
But
was
it-
a sort of you could get a decent bottle in there.
bottle in there, yeah. I think the fact that we did actually buy our wine, though, is really quite fundamental to a difference between sediment and other wine writing, because you know we actually went out, spent our own money on this, and I think you have a very different perspective on wine when you have paid for it and when you're going to drink it, from people like yourself who taste wine. I'm sure you do buy wine yourself, but you also get a lot of it for nothing. And
Oh, I know. It's just Chateau Margaux one day, Lafitte the next.
Yeah.
I mean, I just
There
can't
you
keep
are.
up with it, actually.
I like to think
Brush your
when
teeth with
you
it.
actually have to go out to buy it, and you go to wine merchants and you go to supermarkets and you have it delivered, and you are paying for it.
Yes.
I think it gives you a different attitude. I think hopefully maybe it put us in connection with more of our readers, that they were in that same thing. They were having to go out and buy it. Maybe that gave us a slightly different slant on wine buying and drinking as well.
Yeah, I mean, on the rare occasions we did get anything alcoholic and drinkable. I mean, I remember being absolutely fawning about it. I think to say anything positive I could find. I was so desperate for them to give me some more, and I think there was. I went to a tasting of it was mead. Have you ever come across mead? Mm-hmm.
Honey wine, yeah.
Honey wine, and it was a mead tasting, and they said we're going to bring back mead into the mainstream, and it was horrible. It was awful stuff. We had about 7 different kinds of mead. But I went to this thing, and then I wrote about it, and was terribly fulsome about it. But nothing came. And they said, they also do gin, even better. But that was the end of that. But I felt this absolute compulsion to be obsequious about the free booze, which, Paul said most of the time it was never the case. It's just we could and did say whatever we wanted to say.
And you'd be a PR's dream these days with influencers and so on. You'd be probably drowning in the stuff if you want to resurrect that blog.
Well, not with some of the stuff we say about it, I don't think.
If you were to follow up with a second book today, what would you name it?
Oh Lord!
Would you go back to your wife there, Charleston? Get her to get some help.
50 ways to peeve your liver.
Oh, you've been thinking about that, haven't you? That didn't come out of nowhere. Yeah, I mean, actually, probably something the same. You're something like your doctor looking at you, saying, "How much do you drink?"
Yeah.
Do you know what the weekly allowance is meant to be in this country?
Yes.
No, that would be a bit too downbeat. I can't think of. On earth would one say? No, I don't know.
Oh, that's all right. Might come
We
back to
do
you.
We do a food book. Oh, shut up! No,
food.
It's
Yeah.
a stupid thing.
I've made it so I'll eat it, or something.
Yeah, I've made it so
Unfortunately, that
let it
happens
go
every
cold.
day. Yeah.
Too prosaic. Okay. Well, let's talk more about wine writing. So your book alternates chapters between the two of you, which creates a delightful conversational rhythm. Was there any challenge in this collaborative approach, or did it just sort of flow like the wines you share?
Sorry,
I think it made it easier in terms of actually doing the blog, which was where we started, because we did it on alternate weeks.
Right.
So you had 2 weeks to come up with the next piece, as it were, but there was always a piece up there every week. We never knew what the other was going to be writing about. So you'd read your partner's piece absolutely fresh, as the public would. And I think the combination of all that made it actually quite a positive thing rather than a challenging thing.
Good. Are there any wine writers who have, or any writers, not just wine writers, but writers who've influenced your writing, whether it's about wine or otherwise?
I always tried to write like Martin Amis, the late Martin Amis, not Martin Amis the novelist, but his journalism and his criticism, which are lots of collections of them, and they are just fantastic. They are so.
What makes it so good?
He writes about. He does. There are lots of book reviews. There are lots of interviews with other famous writers. Not so much celebrities, but obviously your Saul Bellows and people like that. And he really knows his stuff. He's incredibly sharp. He's very rude, very, very funny, and there's no fat. They're quite short. So, I would just, to anybody out there, go and buy his collection, The War Against Cliché, which is journalism and reviews, mixture of them, and just doesn't get any better. And I thought, if I can get within 100 miles of that, then, that's what I'm aiming for.
100 miles within the War Against Clichés.
Yeah,
that's what you want to do.
Does that make sense? Something like that.
Oh, it fits perfectly.
I think
How about you? How about you, Paul? Any influences?
It sounds almost like a setup from Charles, but as far as writing about wine and alcohol on the whole is concerned, it would be Martin's father, Kingsley Amis, who is tremendously entertaining. I mean, some of it has dated now. He was writing really in the sort of late 50s, 1960s, when wine really wasn't very well known in the UK at all. And he's so entertaining about it, about drinking it, serving it, the consequences of it. And yet he wasn't, he was knowledgeable through experience, which is all I am, really. He didn't study it. He didn't have a WSET or anything like that. But he could really make you want to drink. And I think that was a great encouragement for me.
Absolutely. Was he said this is a naive little Burgundy, in Bride's Head Revisited, something like that? When they were digging through the cellar? I can't remember if that was it, but
they
anyway.
come across an absolutely impossibly refined wine, don't they?
Yes.
And Sebastian says, don't pretend you've heard of it, Charles, because you won't have. Words to that effect.
Right. It's a gazelle, and they are going back and forth, and it was delightful. Anyway, I'm butchering it. But yeah, his passages. Did he have a book dedicated to wine, Kingsley Amis?
He wrote a couple, actually.
Okay.
Yes.
I can't remember the name of the thing now.
I can turn my head from the screen and see if I've got my copy, because I've certainly got it on the shelves in here. So.
Everyday Drinking by Kingsley Amis?
Everyday Drinking. That sounds familiar.
That does, and that is probably it. So I won't go looking for it, but yes, it probably is.
Now, throughout your book, you wrestle between wine snobbery and enjoyment. Do you think that particular tension is unique to wine, or are there other consumables or product categories where it exists?
I think I'm instinctively drawn to these kind of things. And I think, for instance, menswear, the sort of brands and so on there.
What buttons to do?
Charles is looking appalled there because he knows perfectly well. I will go on for ages about, makers of shirts.
You talk amongst yourselves. I'll go and have a
suits.
cup of tea.
I think the same kind of, levels of aspiration and desire and quality,
particularity,
and excellence, authenticity, all those sort of things, they, for me, hold true in menswear as they do in wine. So, I'd say it spreads out from wine. Not for Charles, obviously. He's
No, well, you can see from the way, I've just got out of bed, but yeah.
Do you find it in other categories, Charles, or not so much?
I think so. Everybody these days has to be a bit of an expert about everything. You can't just eat food. You have to have something. You have to bring something special to it. And everybody's, you have to know so much more and hold so many more opinions. And food's the obvious one, but the one where it really, I think, gets me, it's like travel, tourism. And now that's become. It wasn't just a question of, we've been to France, or we've gone to Italy, or we've maybe gone to the United States, or something like that. It's how you did it, and where you stayed, and what you did, and what tours you went on, and it's so full of itself, and then it becomes a transaction. Well, I'll trade you a trip to Singapore for a trip to New Zealand or something like that. Oh right, well I'll see you in New Zealand and I'll raise you a Thailand, and that's. It drives me around the bend. So yes, I think that's where I would feel most aware of it.
I think the one in the UK that is closest to wine now, and this has happened in the last 5 years or so, is coffee.
Okay.
People, they go on and on and on about where the beans are from and how they're grown and what temperature it should be and all this kind of thing. The
Who
latest
are these
thing
people?
They
did it where I'm.
The latest thing is how to have black coffee, and it's not an Americano, which is where you take your black coffee and you put the hot water in. No, now you've got to put the hot water in the cup and then put the black coffee into that, and this is the finest way of drinking black. You just think, come on, really, it's.
Well, you could have a sister blog to Sediment called Grounds or something. I don't know.
Yes.
But it sounds like you wouldn't want to.
Works, yeah.
No.
No. Okay.
Paul lives a more exclusive and refined life than I do. So he really actually does worry about which order you put things in a cup. And Paul actually has bottles of wine in a kind of little tiny cellar under the stairs and all that. So, and he wears fancy trousers with labels on. So.
And jackets buttoned just so.
Absolutely.
Yes. What's the most pretentious wine moment or action or phrase or anything you've ever heard, witnessed, or committed yourselves?
Yeah. I couldn't, because I don't move in Paul's world in that way. I don't get exposed to it now. But the only one I could think of was actually just the other week. And it was around here, it was around our house, and I did it. I said it, and somebody brought a fancy bottle. It was a red Bordeaux. It was 2005. It had a fancy label. I don't know what it was. It was. So we opened it up, and I'm not quite sure whether it was the best I'd ever drunk. And I actually found myself saying, "Grippy tannins," and you think, "Oh God."
Do you look?
Pull yourself together. Grippy tannins. So, all right, that's my.
It's
my
good
pick.
to get that out.
Paul has got so many pretentious wine moments.
I probably wouldn't recognise them as such because I sort of, I quite enjoy them, don't I? So, yeah.
Quite enjoy them, yeah.
Okay, so it's just a way of life.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Charles, you described one wine as I'm going to quote you here from your book. It's wonderful. As turning into a black curranty kind of sluicing, narrowly covering the roof of the mouth, followed by a hot gas blast in the back of the throat, an impression of plastic adhesive ending with a flourish of underarm deodorant spreading down towards the lungs. Not great, but not something you could feel indifferent towards either. And another, I have to quote you one more time here, as wines as rapidly, spreading as rapidly across the floor of the mouth like a CO2 fire extinguisher, leaving only a chesty rasp in its wake. Now, how did you develop your distinctive vocabulary for describing wines? And do you ever get pushback on it?
Yeah. It was that 5 years I did in jail, really, that really helped.
Really good education, huh?
Yeah. I can't remember. I cannot imagine what I was writing about or where I got that from. But it sounds revolting and entirely plausible.
Yes.
And as for,
I think I've had that wine. Mm-hmm.
As for people, kind of, well, like Paul was saying, nobody ever read us.
So not much pushback.
Nobody ever read us. Full stop. Nobody ever read us to find out about what was best and what was the most refined or the most sophisticated. So I don't remember anybody. People tended to join in rather than push back on us. I mean, I was just going about some Scotch whiskey that we had in Egypt. It was Egyptian Scotch whiskey, so it wasn't really Scotch, but it came in a thing that looked a bit like a Scotch bottle, and it was very alcoholic. And some guy wrote in, and he said his dad used to drink it, I think, when he was out there in the Middle East, during the war or something like that. So that was great. No, I don't remember being sort of ticked off or held up to account or anything like that.
And Paul, did you go to wine writing school or anything? How did you develop your vocabulary?
I think that what we did was to draw our descriptions from our real life. I think there's a tendency in wine writing to use metaphors that have been learnt along with the education. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes they're things that you wouldn't necessarily experience. I mean, I've got a cat, but I really wouldn't use the term cat's pee in describing any wine. I don't know what cat's pee actually tastes like. So why would I say, oh, yes, there's elements of cat's pee in this? And yet so many wine writers do. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I talk about it smells of ink, well, people know what ink smells like, and it seems more appropriate to use ink as an analogy than cat's pee. Not probably for the same wine, but and I think nearly all our metaphors were drawn from everyday life rather than from wine education, if you like, because we didn't have a wine education.
Very evocative. Now, I forget which one of you, but you write about when wines are described as gluggable or suitable for quaffing. You don't like that. What descriptors do you find that make you cringe? Other ones? Any others you've noted?
Those, that was me, and it was really widespread across wine writers when they were talking about wines, and they keep on, it's a quaffing wine. Well, sorry, I wouldn't say to my guests, quaff this or glug that. It just sounds horrible. Right. The other one, which I really couldn't get with, was easy drinking. I thought, well, wine is meant to be easy to drink. If it's hard to drink, there's something wrong with the wine, or you need a doctor, not a wine critic. It's why would people say easy drinking?
Yeah. Well, the current term is sessionable, so I guess you could invite your dinner guests to have a session with a wine.
A session means getting drunk, doesn't it?
It does over here.
Sessionable.
S-E-S-S.
Sessionable. Like it's down in like one session of drinking. Anyway, it's just I find that bizarre.
I can't stand it. I mean, everybody talks about notes of, and then there'll be a list of things that you may or may, well, a bit like Paul was saying about cats, and it'll be kind of juniper and tobacco and vanilla and any other thing that you can think of that sounds vaguely sort of fragrant or not. And I never get that. I get something, but I would. It's just, but there's actually, it seems there's quite a small word store for wine writing. Lots of criticisms, it's true, the same thing. But you're always having to just reshuffle the same words to try and create some sort of nuance. And I'm not sure, I don't know where it gets you in the end. It all seems, it all seems terribly familiar, even if it's new.
Absolutely. Is there anything that's changed about wine criticism or writing since you've published your book that you've noticed? Any major changes?
I don't know. I never read anything these days, so I would guess. You tell me, but I mean the rise of the amateur critic. Everybody's a critic these days.
Everyone
and
is.
Everybody's got opinion. Everybody posts their opinions everywhere.
Yeah.
And I would guess that must have some effect on if you're serious about it, if it's what you do for a living, or what effect does this tide of sentiment, and opinion, what effect does that have on the way you project yourself, the way you are perceived? Anyway, that's what I would get.
Mm-hmm. And Paul, do you see anything? I mean, I know the two of you really don't probably read lots of wine books or wine columns, but do you see any trends in where wine writing is going, or have you noticed anything on the odd thing you do look at?
Most of the wine writing that I look at is guidance for purchase. So it will be sort of newspaper type columns where they've got 6 wines for under a tenner or something like that.
Right.
And I think that has stayed pretty much the same because the audience has stayed pretty much the same. Mm-hmm. I think probably those sort of influencers, as it were, are out there. But we're a bit old for that, really. We're analog people rather than digital people. And, the joy of writing, as it were, in print, it means a great deal. And I'd like that analog approach rather than the digital kind of approach, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now let's talk about wine shopping, because I just love the whole thing about browsing in wine stores as a flâneur, or someone who sort of observes people, is there to look but not necessarily to buy. And one of you described it as a shopping, especially in posh shops. It's a cross between spiritual quest and shoplifting. Back to that trench coat, I guess. Is wine the only product, do you think, that we feel guilty about when we're just looking and we really don't want to buy it?
I mean, I don't feel guilty. I would put it on a par with going into a bookshop.
Right.
And you're perfectly entitled to go into a bookshop and look around the shelves. And the difference is that in a lot of the wine merchants, as soon as you get in the door, someone says, "Can I help you?" And, well, no, actually, I'd just like to have a look. And then, all right. Well, no one would say that if you walked into a bookshop.
Right.
Can I help you? You're left alone to have a look around and see what there is. And, so I really like looking in wine shops, looking what's there, learning from it. I think, a lot of the wine education is just, so that those grapes are in the Italian section, or okay, that's in the you learn from seeing how it's divided up geographically, how these things are shelved and so on. I think it's a terrific experience, and if you get the objectionable store assistant who wants to help you, all it's doing is blocking off that sort of education, if you like.
Right. And Charles, your shopping experiences, are you kind of in tune with that? Or?
I don't have any shopping experiences.
Shoplifting then? I don't know.
Paul likes shops. He likes to go into all sorts of shops and shop. Which, okay, all right. I hate shopping. I'm just a traditional bloke. I just want to, if I want something, I think, I'll try it. Okay, I know roughly what it is, and I know roughly where to look for it, and I'm going to go and look for it. If it's not there, I'm out. And
surgical
that's it.
strike.
Wine is exactly the same thing. I fancy a bottle of that. That'll do. It's about a 90-second process.
Okay. Yeah, I can see the dialectic here.
And I never go into wine fancy. There's a fancy new wine shop just opened up near us. I still haven't been into it. Paul has.
I have, yeah.
And and I suppose I'll have to one day. But why? It's just as Paul says, some guy's going to jump out at me because they're going to assume I'm looking for something, but I don't really know what, and so he's going to, no, forget
pressure you into something or whatever.
Charles is a lot happier than I am with deliveries. He has often written about having these cases and cases delivered from supermarket online retailers and so on, and because he can do all that at a distance, so he doesn't have to interact with anyone. He can just order it online. And I hate deliveries, so when I have to have wine delivered, it's a nightmare situation. So a big difference there between us, I think.
Oh, well, yes, Paul, I have to quote you now, because you have a hilarious passage about wine deliveries. I'll read just a tiny bit, but you say that wine always tends to arrive at the worst possible moment during a bathroom break or when a disapproving spouse is in earshot. And so quoting, is that something for me, Mrs. K, your wife? Her dulcet tones precede her steps downstairs. I'm caught in the hallway, case in hands, like a dog with a string of sausages. What? That box. I think I would be pushing my luck if I were to retort, what box? No. Anyway.
Well, this is true. This is what always happened. The doorbell would go, and I'd be in the bathroom. And what am I going to do? I'd open the windows. Hang on, just a minute. No. So by the time I get down the stairs, this huge box is being put in my arms, and there's my wife. Oh, it's another box of wine. Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. Yes, I'll just take it downstairs. And, you can't get away with it. And usually, it's so awkward. I hate it. And I find myself sitting there all morning waiting for the doorbell to ring, and then it doesn't ring until it's the wrong moment, and it's just terrible.
My heart really goes out to you, Paul. My ex-husband, I used to do sneaky shopping, one of many reasons why we're no longer married, but I would try to get the dress inside in my closet, tags off, bags away, what, this old thing,
Yes, yeah.
It just, inevitably, he was there when the delivery came. Anyway.
Always happens. What's
the worst cover story you've ever concocted for explaining an unexpected case of wine at the door? Did you even try?
It must be one of those PRs that's sent us, if only.
All those samples that you keep getting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. What's the worst or oddest marketing gimmick you've ever seen to market wine? I don't know, gift with purchase, any marketing thing that you thought was kind of silly or beyond the pale?
And over to Paul on that. I can't, apart from occasionally you got like back in the day, if it was a sort of sparkling wine, there would be a little nylon, you get a fun bug, attached to the bottle. But I mean, that's what I could remember. Paul, would they do anything fun?
Every
pair
Christmas,
of shoes or something?
I used to revel every Christmas in doing what we called the sediment Christmas mart, and I would look for the most ridiculous wine-related products that were being sold anywhere, and sort of write them up as a little Christmas gift guide
of what not to buy.
Exactly, because they're so ridiculous. Who on earth buys this rubbish? It's the idea that if you drink wine, someone will buy you this. I got you this.
They will. Yeah,
absolutely dreadful.
There's a menagerie of shame. What were the most ridiculous things that you wrote about? Like one or two things that were just the most useless wine gadgets or gifts? One
of them was a wine glass that was like in half. So you had a curved half and then a flat edge. And it was, you said you wanted only half a glass.
Yeah.
And the ugliest one I ever came across was this sort of frame that went on the wall, and there was a hole in the side so you could put your used corks into this frame. And gradually this frame would fill up with your used wine corks. You go, who on God's earth wants a box full of wine corks on their wall?
Well, each cork is a precious memory of a fine wine enjoyed, isn't it?
Not in our
the idea? Well, no, it was just a load of screw tops in my case, but there was. I did find online once, but no, I never actually got my hands on it. An old-fashioned corkscrew, and the handle was in the shape of Bill Clinton.
Oh, that's odd.
Yeah, that's what I thought. There you go.
Wow.
I mean, I could have sprung £18.99 or something for it, or dollars, but I didn't. There you go.
Could be worth a lot these days. What about your colleagues? Tell them, what was your colleague's idea about a tanker of wine?
Oh, that was a mate of mine. It just comes up with these terrible ideas about absolutely everything you can think of. He's a genius, absolute genius. and he had this. He said, "Look, let's put this on a proper business footing. So you get a truck, and then you somehow make a huge wooden barrel, like a fût de chêne, enormous one. Really? Put it on the back of the truck, take it down to the south of France, fill it full of the cheapest red wine you can lay your hands on, drive back really fast, and then go to one of these markets, like the ones that Paul goes to in trendy parts of town, where there's cheesemongers and sort of vegetable sellers, and you park up, and there you are, and you fill people's containers up with this stuff, and you get a French guy dressed in a stripy shirt with a beret." Or an English guy pretending to, and he said, "It can't fail. This is the best idea ever, and we'll make a fortune." I don't know how did. Anyway,
wow.
I managed to talk him out of it.
You went somewhere in France, didn't you, of filling up like a jerry can?
Oh yeah, well that was
wine.
the whole. That was on the basis. That was what that was all about. Because
a jerry can, like for petrol, like for gasoline.
It was. It's beautiful. It was in Southeast. It's Vaughan too. And we got some friends there, and they don't make wines, but they grow there. Anyway, there's the cooperative, the local cooperative. It's wonderful. So we went down, and it was Saturday morning, and there are these whopping great fût de chêne, these big vats, and people were just bringing along these, they call them QB, a little plastic flagon with a tap on the end. It's 5 litres. And the guy was... And it was like a petrol pump. He'd take out the metal handle, there's a big rubber hose, goes into this whopping great vat, and he'd fill up your QB with 5 litres of whatever type of Vaughan you wanted. And I thought this is and I immediately bought a QB and had it filled 5 litres of something, and it was, that was really a wonderful moment. I mean, the problem with the QB is it's not like a bib, it's not like a wine box.
Right.
It obviously doesn't collapse.
Right.
So so you're letting the wine out and it's aerating, and so you've actually got to rebottle it as soon as you get home, which I had slightly overlooked. So I had to drink it very, very fast, and even then it went off. But the idea of this huge, beautiful oaken barrel with thousands of litres of wine just coming out of a petrol pump hose, that's just beautiful.
Oh wow. Well, yeah, you could modify that idea and have the reserve and the table de vin, like they do the different grades of gasoline.
They did. Yeah, there were all sorts of different flavours to choose from. So I think that was instrumental in this preposterous idea of anyway.
Okay. Yeah. Which one of you bonded with a salesman over a 1947 Sauterne? I think that was in a wine shop, right?
Oh, that was
not going to be me.
Charles wouldn't even know what a 1947 Sauterne was.
Excuse me, I do know what a Sauterne is. I understand dates.
There was a lovely wine shop in Paris, and I'd gone in there to do my sort of browsing bit, and the assistant inevitably said, in French, could he help me? And I sort of stumbled through saying, more. And he obviously recognised then that I was English and he was an Englishman, guy from up in Lancashire, young guy, and we started talking about wine, and he said, just look at this. And he sort of opened this drawer, and in there was this 1947 Sauterne, and both of us just stood there and looked at it, and just seeing this wine was such a privilege. We were both sort of looking at each other. And that was just a great moment, yeah.
You both understood how special it was.
Yeah, that was it, yeah.
How long ago was this? I mean, how old was the wine when you were looking at it?
Well, it was in the 20s, so it's nearly 80 years old, 70, 80 years old.
No, 47 or 27?
47, yeah.
No, 47.
47, okay.
Yeah. So it's you mean the 20s this century?
Yes.
Oh, right, okay. Really?
Yeah.
And it would have been okay?
I would think so, for a good Sauterne. Certainly if it was a Decam, it would be, yeah.
Too bad you didn't open it, but...
no, sadly not.
Yeah, sadly. So, I trust it wasn't Ikem.
I don't think it was, or I would have put that in the piece when I...
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, but Sauterne's still pretty special no matter which one.
Yeah.
Sweet wine from Bordeaux. Okay. So a lot of your stories are about bargain hunting, which is delightful. What was your most triumphant wine deal discovery, and was it actually good to drink? Either of you?
probably a better bargain.
It would have to be the petrol pump stuff in
the
in
petrol
Vaughan too. That was
wine.
that was
Right.
yeah, that was a real revelation, and because it's so unpretentious and fresh and real, that was just great. That's it. Nothing could beat that.
Yeah, from Petrus to petrol pump. You guys do cover the whole gambit there. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Do you think there's something that expensive wine delivers that bargain wines can't, apart from perhaps, I don't know, inherent quality? I mean, there's more expensive inputs, but is there anything there other than maybe, I don't know, how you're feeling about it?
I don't drink enough of the stuff to fall, no.
Yeah. Well, no, I think there is a greater experience out of drinking better wine. There's no doubt about it. But I think that the return for your money sort of plateaus fairly quickly. So, if you go up for, I don't know the equivalent in Canadian dollars, but, if you go up from a £10 wine to a £30 wine, you will really notice the difference and have a tremendously greater experience. But
So from $15 to $40 approximately, yeah.
But then if you multiply that by 10 and go from $40 to $400, I suspect that the difference in quality isn't that great. It's beginning to plateau out. So
I'd agree.
You've got to decide when you're going up that $400 level. Well, yes, it's going to be an experience, but is it going to be 10 times as good as a $40 bottle?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would sort of go in the other direction. That if you've got something that's really pretty ropey, but you can find a way of making it acceptable, then that's a fantastic win. Because actually, again, south of France, I remember we were in a restaurant and we said, "Oh, let's have a bottle of rosé." I can't remember, it's local rosé, and it turned up and it was room temperature and it was a beautiful, hot, warm evening. But okay, what do we do then? And then this big bag of ice cubes gets plonked on the table next to us. Of course. So you've fill up your glass and then plonk in an ice cube and let it all mix and mingle. And it was just, of course, it worked perfectly. You weren't drinking quite so hard. The wine chilled. There was a beautiful mist would form on the glass. It was just, and it didn't matter because it was, the wine was like €2 a litre or something like that. It was just nothing special. So that sort of enjoyment, that's again, you can't, that's beyond price.
Love that. The two ways, two directions. I don't know if both of you are deeply suspicious of mixed cases, so of different wines, say 12 different wines. But as you rightly note, we don't buy mixed cases of bread or many other products.
No.
Do you think there's an element of gambling or covering your bases or hoping to discover one thing among some duds? Or what is it about mixed cases and wines?
I think it's an almost con trick on the part of the wine retailers that they can get away with fobbing off the wines that they can't sell otherwise. There's no other real argument for it. Oh, it's a lucky dip. You get, well, no, it's not, because they've chosen the wines that are going in there. And I think you'd be very unlikely to unwrap a bottle. Wow, a bottle of Latour. Well, no, it's not going to happen. It's like those Christmas hampers as well. When you look at even the posh Fortnum & Mason Christmas hamper, there's always a couple of things in there that no one really wants. The tinned peaches or something, I don't know. And you think, yeah, they just put that in because they can't keep it otherwise.
Absolutely. That sounds very, very likely end of line stuff. Let's move to wine vessels. In your chapter on wine boxes, you described the somewhat conflicted feelings you have about them. Do you think the quality and perception of box wines has changed since you read the book? Have you changed your perception of them?
I have to say I keep a wine box of white wine in the fridge now permanently in order to cook with it. Because if you open a bottle of white wine just to put 100 ml in a recipe, well, then you've got this open bottle of wine. Whereas if you've got a box, you can just use the tap, take off your 100 ml, put it in, and all's well and good.
True.
I think in terms of having a wine box out to drink from, I found that was a recipe for disaster, because it's like, look, I'm just passing the wine box. Oh, why don't I just have a little glass now? And, I always feared the next thing would be sort of lying on the floor holding this box up over your open mouth as you can.
Well, we've all been there. I mean, I'm thinking of going back to it. Actually, I haven't had a wine box in the house for ages. But I know people who will keep a rosé or a white in the fridge, just for tippling.
Right.
And as long as you can maintain an iron grip, then it seems a pretty good way to do it. So I might try that again.
Okay. Well, evolution. Your descriptions of drinking from plastic goblets are hilarious. What's the strangest vessel you've ever drunk wine from in a pinch? And did it affect the taste or experience of the wine?
Your industrial mug, I would say.
Ah, what was that?
Really strange. I mean, it was a mug, normally tea or coffee. Okay. But I thought, but I had some really horrible red. I think maybe this might have been a Côte du Rhône. I bought some really. Oh no, it's my brother-in-law brought me a case back. It was really nice. It was revolting, absolutely disgusting. I don't know why. And I was just trying to find different ways of getting through it. Like setting fire to it or straining it through a sock or something like that. Anyway, I thought I'll put it in a mug. It's a big old chunky mug, big old chunky coffee mug, and it kind of helped because the mug sort of you weren't in a glass, you couldn't see it really. You just peered down into it, and it sort of empowered you. You're holding on to it, so you're not going to get away. There's only one boss here, and it's me, right? So you stay in the mug until you're drunk. It was that sort of feeling. It was I would recommend that if you've got something that's a bit hard to dispose of.
I have to try that this weekend. And Paul, what about your Riedel tasting glass?
The Riedel tasting glass. This was, I have it here. I'll show it to you.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. So this was when we were sort of starting off, and when Riedel were relatively young still, and designing glasses for each particular wine variety. So I thought, right, okay, I really like Bordeaux. Now, I can't afford the great Bordeaux, so I'll get a Riedel sommelier tasting glass, which will improve the taste of the cheaper Bordeaux. And this glass is now retails for like £90 for a glass.
Wow, $150 something.
$150, something like that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's about the size of a baby's head. If you can see this, it's a colossal thing. I mean,
big.
It's a really huge glass.
You could do a steam facial in that after you finish drinking.
And so I'm in this position where if I've got people round like for dinner, if I sit at the head of the table with this and everybody else has got normal wine glasses, I look a complete plonker. And I'd love to sit there and go, it's magnificent. And they're going to think, So unfortunately, it doesn't get much use. It does enhance the taste of the Bordeaux. There's no doubt about it. But I'm so embarrassed sitting there drinking out of this thing the size of a melon that it really doesn't get much use.
Oh, that's too bad, Paul. Let's talk about your experience at drinking wine at 10 Downing Street with the Prime Minister of the UK, and then at Lambeth Palace with the Archbishop of Canterbury.
That's right.
So, maybe what surprised you about the wine selections at both?
What surprised me was how poor the wine was.
Really?
I mean, it comes back to my absurd ideas that, this is all about aspiration and social status and these sort of things. And you get a wonderful look. Here is an invitation to 10 Downing Street. You can see what you get. Look, here's here we are.
Looks fancy.
Got the crests and all this sort of thing. And then you go there, and they're drinking Campo Viejo Rioja, which is like rubbish wine, really everyday wine.
What's wrong with it?
Well, it's not the sort of wine you expect to find in 10 Downing Street. In Lambeth Palace, Archbishop of Canterbury, you go there, what are they drinking? Basic New Zealand, Australian Cabernet Sauvignon Blanc, really basic wines. And the conclusion I came to in the end was that the occasion, the location, is so significant that they don't really need to make it up with the wine. Because you're not there for the wine, you're there for the Prime Minister, for the Archbishop of Canterbury, for the social conversation. So they get away with this really quite low-rent wine.
Do you think they were pouring the PM and the Archbishop different wines? Or
no, I don't think so. In fact, certainly with the PM at the time was David Cameron, and I didn't even see him with a glass in his hand. He just swanned around the room, having a little bit of conversation here, a little bit of conversation there. The other thing that we were talking about, strange drinking vessels, in number 10, they serve the wines in these sort of shatterable glasses. They're really thick. It's like car windscreen glass. Presumably so that should anyone think, I'll break this glass and stab it in the face of the Prime Minister, you can't do it, because if you shatter the glass, it'll just crumble into bits. But it's really not good for drinking wine from. It's a good security arrangement, but not a good wine drinking arrangement.
Wow. Does anything stand out from those visits for you, Charles? Either place?
I wasn't there. I mean, I don't get invited. I don't get invited to 10 Downing.
More posh.
I have been to 11 Downing Street, but that was for a different thing. No, I don't.
11 Downing? Is that where the dog sleeps or something? What is 11 Downing?
That's where the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the next guy down.
Oh, okay.
That's where he lives.
I see.
It was for a wedding reception. I can't remember anything about what we drank.
Oh,
no,
okay.
I never go to these fancy pants.
I'm sensing a total divergence. It's a wonder that you two ever met or stayed together as writers. But
who says we stayed together?
Extraordinary. Okay. The chapter about writing or about trying Queen Victoria's tipple, red wine mixed with Scotch. What did that taste like?
It was just horrible.
Okay.
It was half and half, and I didn't make too much. And I read she was very, very partial to it, apparently. You think, well, Queen Victoria, this model of rectitude and uprightness and probity and all that. She took marijuana during childbirth to ease the discomfort, and her regular drink, when she had Gladstone around and Disraeli or everyone, any time, was this filthy mixture that she swore by. So I made some. It's half and half. I put it in a little glass. And I went writing or doing something, and I sort of put the glass down and then forgot it was there, really, and then looked at it and thought, oh yeah, I must try that, and took a really big slug.
Oh.
And it was awful, and I thought I was going to die. And, I had chest pains, double vision, and all this sort of stuff. So that was the end of that. It was a total waste of Scotch and red wine.
It just ruined both. Oh.
Actually, and the other one that I wanted to try but couldn't, I just didn't have the courage, perhaps I will one day, was Evelyn Waugh, the famous writer, Brideshead Revisited, the great writer.
Yes. I was mixing up the two, yeah.
And he really drank, and he had a midday reviver to sort of get him through the rest of the day. And that was a mixture of Guinness, the extra stout, equal measures, Guinness, gin, and ginger beer. A third. And he would drink a sort of roughly a pint of that just to get through lunchtime. But I'm still waiting to try that. But I've got to be strong.
Right. Wait a little longer. Yeah.
We were talking about Kingsley Amis earlier on, and at one point he used to have a drinks cabinet on the little landing and the turn of the stairs in his house. And so I said, why have you got a drinks cabinet there? Well, in case I get caught short without a drink when I'm going upstairs. I'd rather fancy following that myself.
That's great. And how about celebrity wines? Have you encountered any that you thought were ridiculous, or any that actually tasted good?
They all seem to be just sort of marketing things.
I don't know. Cricketer Ian Botham, didn't he launch a range of, they all do, don't they? Well, some of them do.
Sports celebrities.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I absolutely, completely meaning it. Did Angelina Jolie or something? Did she do one?
Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, Miraval, but
one.
they split, and he's now the majority stakeholder. So that's of course produced by the Perrin family, Chateau Beaucastel. So,
okay.
It is supposed to be quite nice, but it's out of our price range, I think.
It is pricey. Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
And the PRs haven't sent us one, so.
Doesn't Francis Ford Coppola, doesn't he make wine?
Yes, he does.
He makes it, and it's supposedly good, and again out of our price range, nice. I think.
Yeah, in the old Inglenook estate. So let's just touch briefly then. I love this, what you said. When discussing drinking alone, you note that people who announce with a great gust of piety that they never drink on their own are the worst sort of Puritan. Do you still believe that? And maybe say more about it?
Who said that? Was that Paul or me?
No, it must have been you.
That was Paul.
No, it's you.
It can't have been. That doesn't sound like me at all. Oh, dear. What was I thinking? You sure? This sounds more like you.
What do you think about people who say that? Maybe it's from somebody else.
I could have sworn that was one of Paul's. Yeah, sorry. What?
So people who say they never drink on their own.
Oh, right.
They're the worst sort of Puritans.
I'm laying it on a bit heavy, really. I'm not quite sure what mood I was in when I wrote that, but I still. I'd go the other way. Actually, I may sound like an alcoholic, I suppose, but I love drinking on my own. Not to excess, not drinking yourself under the table because you're fed up, but just, I like eating alone, Frank. You're just there and you can just enjoy it, whatever it is. Yeah, I could remember being in places, bars or pubs or something like that, and there's a break, there's a moment, and you're just having a glass of wine. It's a nice day, and you do that. There's just you and the glass of wine, and that's it. And that's just wonderful. You don't get drunk. You're just having a complete moment of self-indulgence, and so that's, and you can only get that if it's just you. So there you go.
Mm-hmm. Pleasures of solitary drinking. And one of you again noted that Blue Nun was once considered sophisticated in the 1970s. What do you think we'll look back on today that's in vogue right now, say in 10 or 20 years, and say, oh, that was just ridiculous, or it's no longer whatever?
I would say, and it's a combination of the wine and the packaging.
Okay.
And it's what, over here, I don't know if the term has come over there, is yacht rosé.
Oh, yacht rosé.
Yeah.
We've got Rock Yacht Station where they just play innocuous music by feathered-haired 80s guys.
Well, the idea of yacht rosé is two things, really. One is that it comes in as large a bottle as possible.
Okay.
So it looks like almost a fire extinguisher or something. massive bottles of this stuff, because you've got an incredibly expensive yacht. You're an oligarch and you have girls who come out with these massive bottles. And the rosé itself should be as pale as possible. So it's got lighter and lighter and lighter until there's almost no rosé flavour in it whatsoever. And that's the hallmark of it being a really glamorous yacht rosé, is that it's practically no colour, no flavour, but comes in a colossal bottle. I think that's the one that in a few years' time they're going to look back and say, what? What was that all about?
Well, it epitomizes that the whole yacht scene. Charles, is there anything for you any trend or particular type of wine that you think in 10 years we'll think that was ridiculous? Why were we caught up with that?
I'm just agnostic on this. I mean, I take Paul's point. I mean, certainly in the UK, rosé has become. Rosé commands a price premium anyway. The most ordinary stuff is £1.50 more, than its neighbour, if its white or red neighbour. And it's a sort of it's a sociable drink, and it's got a girls' night out kind of drink, and it's the packaging, and it's packaged and repackaged in fancy bottles, not just huge bottles, but it's bottles with all sorts of ribbing and lumps and strange shapes to make them look different, and that may be 10 years now. So what was the fuss about rosé? It was all right, but come on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, time's flying. So how about a lightning round? Just some quick answers or quick questions, short answers. Yeah. Let's see. You can answer it or pass, but if your mother wrote a book about you, what would the title be? Either of you?
Yes, wait a minute. There is one. Are you sure that's a good idea?
I like that.
Yes, I like that. Yeah.
How about, you don't both have to answer them, but if you want to, go ahead. There's no buzzer, but just let me know. If your high school yearbook had superlatives, what would you have been voted most likely to become?
Our school motto was rather of use than fame. And I suspect both as a view of me and a criticism of that, they'd say most likely to be famous.
Okay.
Most
I
likely
see.
to be famous.
Yeah.
Sorry. All right.
That's useful.
Mine would be most likely to remain exactly the same.
Oh, perfect. Nothing changes. In the Museum of Charles and Paul, which three objects would be on the central display in the central tundra? And why?
That's impossible. Oh, that's
Impossible. Maybe that Riedel tasting glass.
Well,
for
but
Paul?
does it have to be? So it
Maybe
has
that
to
would
be.
be there, yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
just. It's not just something that I really fancy to put in a museum. This is something that pertains to both of us.
Oh, it doesn't. It could be just individual,
Or it
like
could be
the
like a
trench
Rolls
coat
Royce
for
or something, and
shoplifting.
I could just sit
Yeah.
and Paul can admire me from a distance. Or
Yeah.
I don't know how this works. I quite like the idea of this museum.
It's a very limited exhibition. Your favorite childhood food and what you pair with it today as an adult?
Oh, gosh. There used to
Favourite
be a
childhood food.
wonderful thing called Angel Delight that was a sort of really high processed dessert that you used to make from a powder. Oh, God, it was delicious. They won't make it anymore. There's too many chemicals in it. But it was very, very sweet. The idea of having that and maybe that 1947 Sauterne, I think that would be an interesting combination.
Yeah,
There you
shabby
go.
chic kind of. Yeah.
I would say beans on toast.
Okay.
And also pair it with the same Sauterne. I think it would
Sauterne,
work.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. If you could share a bottle of wine with anyone outside the wine industry, living or dead, who would it be and what would the bottle be?
I think boringly for me, and you mentioned at the outset that I chair the T.S. Eliot Society, it would be with T.S. Eliot, who was an enormous clubman. He was actually a great gin drinker rather than wine drinker. He drank in enormous quantities of gin. But the idea of drinking a really nice Bordeaux in one of his gentlemen's clubs on Pall Mall and talking with him about his work, that would do it for me.
Lovely. Anyone come to mind, Charles?
I would have a bottle of champagne with Jimi Hendrix,
Oh, good guitarist.
or Ella Fitzgerald, or both.
Ah, right.
But champagne.
Champagne.
I don't know, champagne, as long as it looks like champagne.
Sounds lovely. If you could put up a billboard in downtown London, what would it say?
Do you remember when you could park here for free?
Just to aggravate everyone.
That's great.
Anything come to mind, Paul?
Probably the thought I've kept in mind for many years, the light at the end of the tunnel is probably a train coming the other way.
I love it. It's a perfect way to wrap up. Is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to mention?
I'd mention wine labels because I think that they are ignored by most wine writers. And I think they're terribly important for two reasons. Firstly, because they're about the only marketing that most bottles of wine have.
True.
Because we go into shops and that's all we can see is the labels. So they're terribly important from that point of view. And personally, I think if you're setting a table for dinner, you've invested in the table, in the crockery, in the cutlery, your glasses. You set up this beautiful thing. Why would you put a bottle of wine on the table, however it tastes, if it looks terrible? And I have decanted lots of wine simply because the label is horrible. And I think that wine critics should always say what the label looks like and whether it would look good on the table.
What for you makes a good label?
As a traditionalist, I like those elderly French labels with sort of dry point pictures of the chateau on.
Castle in the middle
Yeah, with the
distance.
chateau.
Exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
that gives it that sort of authenticity. And
No
so,
fluffy squirrels or purple iguanas.
absolutely not. Exactly.
Okay. I can see your dinner set. Paul, Charles, anything you want to mention that we haven't covered?
Not exactly. I mean, I just thinking about this all over again. You know, having thought about it really for sort of a few years. Paul and I are so old. I mean, we're both nearly 70. We're going to be 70 next year.
Wow, you're well preserved, or maybe pickled, completely
Actually, we're
pickled.
69 next year. But
That's remarkable.
I'm so sorry, Paul.
Yeah.
Yes, of course you are going to be 69 next. No, are you?
No, we're not.
No, you're going to be
you're
70.
right. I think you're right. Next year we'll be saying.
Yeah, come
this
on.
year. Yeah.
Come on,
He's right.
keep up. Yeah, so, we're both going to be 70 in December, so we're a bit of a way off. But I still, we're from that generation where wine became democratized in this country. Obviously, France forever, but for the first time, it wasn't something stuffy or arcane or at least all terribly expensive. And I can remember the first big wine warehouses coming in, and you got a real choice, and it was just wonderful. And I still feel a bit of that novelty value about it. I still I've never really got used to it. And I presume, the younger generations and so on, it's as every day as, bread and butter. But I still feel very slightly excited about it, and it's just ridiculous, but I do. So
there's still some magic about it.
It's just mystique. It's nuts. But
I find the downside of being our age. Once upon a time, I used to invest in buying wines en primeur from France and sticking them downstairs for 10 years, and now the en primeur offers come out, and I look at it and it says, it'll be at its best in 2037. I think, well, I won't be. And I stopped it.
I guess you have to take that into consideration, not just drink by dates, but live by dates. Wonderful, wonderful. Where can we find you and your books and your blog? Just remind us where we can find all that online. Sedimentblog.com.
That's the place to go. And, you mentioned the archive. It's all there. The blogs, the books, more about us. It's all at sedimentblog.com.
Well, I urge everyone to go back to them because they are evergreen. They are timeless because of your wit and style, both of you. So thank you so much for spending your time with us.
Thank you very much.
Your great stories and humor and intelligence. We really appreciate it. It's been a wonderful conversation. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
All right. Don't log off, but I will stop the recording now.